in the 1870s. And St. Anne's, Brockton, which is the big church that's just north of us on Bloor, Dundas, it sent out mission churches. And one of the first mission churches they sent out was a little church of the Epiphany, St. John, and here it is here. It's the little wooden one at the back. And that was done in 1877. This neighborhood grew so quickly that by 1880, just 3 years later, they had to build this. In fact, they were still building it, because if you look very carefully, you can see the ladder where the guy's finishing the roof. This is a really early photograph of Parkdale. Now, the church, can you hold that for me? Excellent. The church is a really good example of what happened in Parkdale. Church of England, the British, beautiful, wealthy people attended here. This was a beautiful little church. It's done in Gothic revival. Now, Gothic revival came from medieval churches in 19th century Britain. It was the fashion to copy those churches to make sort of, what do we call it? Not mock, but just replica churches of the medieval type. And so you have it here in a beautiful example. Notice how it has pointed doors, pointed windows, pointed roof, pointed steeple, all taking your eyes upward to heaven, which is what it was designed to do. The other thing, of course, is that the windows remind one of prayer. So it's a really, the whole church is just a symbol of Christian worship. And it is done in a very classical Ontario style that is called polychromatic. Now I'm going to have arguments because you say polychromatic, but it's only two colors. That's what they call it. Deep red, and then what's called buff. It's sort of a yellow-white. If you've ever been involved in horseback riding, etc., you know the boots when you roll them down, the inside color, that's buff. It's a leather color. So it's in red and buff. And we'll see that characteristic color over and over again. The church got so big by 1890 because the population went from 400 to 6,000 in 8 years. It was like Milton today. And so they had to build another church. So they took and broke this church in half and sent half of it down Queen Street. It's still, the building is still there. But in 1890, it was a separate church, and then in 1980, it was sold to the Lebanese community, and it is the Lebanese Catholic Maronite Church. And that part of the congregation that was Church of England and this one joined together. This church was in bad shape. They rebuilt much of it and restored much of it, and the two congregations were enough to keep it going, and it is now a very vibrant church again. If any of you know anything about stained glass windows, Mr. McCausland, Tim McCausland, the sixth generation of McCausland glassmakers in the city, actually personally came in and replaced those windows, repaired them, fixed them up. And then the bill he sent them was amazing. Yeah, he's quite a guy. So, and I figure there's a few other wealthy congregations that paid a wacky little extra on their windows to balance that out. There's 14 people that would work on those windows. Now, that just gives you an introduction to the whole thing. The only other thing I want to point out is that bell, for many years until they got a fire hall, was the volunteer fire department. And it's just a symbol of all these churches always are connected to community. The back of it, for instance, now is a mission. And it's still dedicated to community.